Welcome to the Mom and podcast. We're your hosts, Suzanne Kearns
and Missy Stevens. We want to help you through everything that happens in the ellipses, from your professional life to your emotional health.
You're a mom and so much more. Let's figure out what comes next together.
Welcome to the Mom and podcast. I'm Missy Stevens, mom and writer, foster child advocate, and this week, spring break planner. I'm a little bit in denial that it's March. Excited and in denial.
It's crazy. And I'm Suzanne Kearns, mom and writer, LGBTQ and sex ed advocate. And this week I am a spring break unplanner. I just canceled all of the reservations that 2 weeks ago Suzanne made. I spent days planning this thing. And then we just got to the point where, I think we just want to chill that week. So we're canceling. But
one of my kids wants to chill. Maybe I'll leave him here with you.
There you go.
I'm taking you on a great trip. And he's like, I just kind of want to do spring break at home. Oh my God.
I'll be like that grandma that's in all the news. I'll do it for $20 an hour.
I'll buy you a meal or two as well.
There you go.
All right. Well, this week we are so happy to be chatting with Natalie Burrell. Natalie is a school psychologist and academic life coach for teenagers and the founder of Life Success for Teens. She has over 10 years of experience working as a school psychologist in a public high school, and her areas of expertise include working with students who have ADHD, executive functioning weaknesses, and other learning differences. But today, we're going to get to benefit from all of Natalie's knowledge and expertise and apply it to our adult lives. She teaches skills to teens that we can all learn from and apply to ourselves to be our best selves. So welcome, Natalie. We're so glad you're here.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. Every part of your bio, I'm like, I want to know more about this. I want to know more about this. I need all this information. But first, before we dive into all that, can you give us a little Natalie 101 about where your career started and how you've got to where you are today?
Yeah, I would be happy to. And it's funny, as I went through my training, I realized, so much of what I do is for teenagers, but I can benefit myself as an adult. And I try to use all of these life hacks and things in my own daily life and teach them to my friends and my husband. I try to have everybody benefit from them. So you're so right. These things that we're going to talk about today are great for teenagers, but also really just great for anybody. As you mentioned, I'm a school psychologist. So my formal training began 15 years ago in school psychology, and I've worked in a public high school in the Cleveland area ever since. And I love that job. I get to work with wonderful people. I get to work with families. I get to feel like I'm making a difference in students' lives. But also at the same time, if I'm going to be completely honest, I started to get frustrated with the amount of report writing that it takes to get a student the help they need, and the amount of red tape it takes to get a student what they need. And so 7 years ago, I started doing a very official Google search on what else can I do with a school psychology degree? Because I felt like I was making a difference, but I wasn't connecting with teenagers in the way that I had hoped to, or that I had thought I was going to be able to working in education. It was more, I see a student, I do their assessments, we have a great conversation, and then I'm moving on to the next student and the next student. And I might have one that comes back to visit every once in a while, but I wasn't able to see the progress over the long term. And that was kind of missing. So that's how I found academic life coaching. And I love it because it's a nice blend of psychology and education, but I get to be right there through the goods and the bads and the highs and the lows, just kind of like a motivator, a cheerleader, a support person, helping our teenagers get from where it is that they are now to wherever it is that they want to be. And it just feeds my heart in a different way. So that's how I got to where I am now. Life Success for Teens, it started off just me coaching anybody who would give me access to their teenager. And then kind of slowly grew over time, where some of my colleagues were saying, I see what you're doing. That's kind of interesting. Like, can you tell me more? And now we're a team of 12. And it's wonderful because, I connect well with a certain kind of kiddo. And my lead coach, Allison, connects well with a different kind of kiddo. So now when we meet with families, it's really just a matter of like playing matchmaker between, what is my coach's background? What does this family's need? How can I connect that student with a coach that they're really going to click with? on a personal level, maybe they have a shared interest or something. Or maybe they have ADHD and they need somebody who works with students who have ADHD every day. So I get to play matchmaker. I get that
Oh, I
hat
love
too.
that.
And I love that part.
So cool. So are you
I love that.
actually on staff at a school or how does that work?
Yeah. So I actually wear two different hats in totally two different realms. So my school psychologist position is completely different than my academic life coach position. So I do them separately. So it's not as if I work for a school and I'm funded by a school. Sometimes I'll do events at other schools or speaking engagements,
Mhm.
but no, school psych is different. So I'm a crazy person trying to do full-time work in two different capacities and have my family. But that's
Yeah.
what I know and that's what I love. So it's okay.
Oh, I
That is
love it.
awesome. And that you mentioned ADHD, and you
Hmm.
have said before that procrastination and ADHD go hand in hand. And I just want to jump right into that. Procrastination is one of my biggest issues. Perhaps it might be an issue that some other people are familiar with. And so I find it really interesting that you say it goes hand in hand with ADHD. And I'm curious if you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. So you're right. They're kind of best friends, procrastination and ADHD. And I happen to live with somebody who I know is undiagnosed ADHD. And to be completely honest, sometimes I wonder if I have it myself. And I don't know if that is just the chaos of everyday life or me trying to do too many things at
Right.
once and be great at them, or if it's ADHD. And I haven't prioritized taking the time to go get it checked out. So that's okay. We're just gonna
Yeah.
roll with that for right now. But
Can't
you're right.
self-diagnose.
Sure, I can. I can get out my DSM, and just like diagnose myself with whatever it is I have. But what I have learned is that I really need personally, and a lot of the teenagers I work with need strategies to have in the moment when they are not feeling motivated, when they feel like pushing something off. It's procrastination 101. It's how
Mhm.
can we get from that feeling of, I just don't want to do this, or I'll do that later, into action mode. And for some
Mhm.
teenagers, that's really difficult. And for some adults, that's really difficult.
Mhm.
And I have had to learn some different life hacks that I'm happy to share with you
Yes, we
that are
want all the
helpful for
hacks.
me. All the hacks, all the hacks. Okay. So I will tell you my absolute favorite one. It is called the Pomodoro technique. And have you heard of this? I see
Mhm,
recognition in your face.
mhm.
It's awesome. So the Pomodoro technique works like this. You're going to set an intention first. So what is it that I'm trying to get done that I'm either procrastinating about or just not feeling motivated to do? After you've set your intention, what you're going to do is clear the clutter. And to me, that means the physical clutter in your workspace. It also means kind of the mental clutter. Like if you've got a lot going on in your mind, maybe it's taking a few breaths, maybe it's saying some affirmations, maybe it's doing a 5-minute calming meditation, whatever it is to clear your mind. So we've set your intention, we've cleared the clutter, and now you're going to actually get to work. And what's motivating about this part is that you're going to set a timer for any amount of time that you feel like you can work uninterrupted. So for some of my teenagers, that's 10 minutes. And for others, it could be 30 or even more. But you set your timer and you've got all your distractions away, right? So you work as diligently as you can for that 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever the time
Mhm.
span is. And when you're done, you take a pre planned break. So maybe that's something like going outside, to get some fresh air. It could be grabbing your favorite beverage, getting a snack. Whatever it is, you take a break and give yourself a little reward for getting that amount of time,
Mhm.
checking that off your to-do list that you were able to work for that. And it's a little bit of a mind hack because if you tell yourself, okay, I can just do 10 minutes,
Mhm.
oftentimes it's that initial getting started that is the hardest part. So if you can get yourself started, you're on a really good track.
And then do you set the
Yeah.
timer again for your little break so that that
Yep,
doesn't become a big
yep,
break?
yeah.
Because my
You
Okay.
don't
little
want
break
to,
would be like, "Oh, look, it's bedtime."
right? Oh,
I'm
look, I'm
already
in
still
our
clearing my clutter of my desk. That could take me
exactly.
that could just veer me for 2 weeks.
That
Yeah.
might be your task you set your timer for, to
I
clear your
do.
clutter.
I
Yeah.
get the decluttering time of this beep, beep,
Yeah,
beep, and then I have
Mhm.
to get to business. Yeah.
it's so true. And you're right. You have to take a break that is not going to lead you down a black hole, a social media black
Right.
hole, a Netflix binge, none of that.
Mhm.
So, what I encourage my teenagers to do is take a pre planned break, like know what you're going to do ahead of time so that it's a certain duration and try to make sure
Right.
you're aware. how long of a break you're taking. And then ask yourself, can I do this again? Do I have another 20 minutes in me? If you do, great. And most likely you do because you're in work mode. And if you don't, okay, take your break and come
Mm.
back to it again when you can.
Yeah, I love that.
I need to try that.
I've actually seen you can get a tomato, like a Pomodoro
You
tomato
can.
timer. Yeah.
You totally can. There's also an app if you want to use the app.
Oh,
That's a
genius.
good one too.
Yes.
Do you want
Okay.
another life hack?
Yes, we need another hack.
So,
Another
okay, I
hack.
need another hack. Yeah.
Okay. Another hack is I'm going to tell you about how I hate to unload the dishwasher. Okay.
Me too.
I can load the dishwasher all day. That's fine with me. But unloading the dishwasher for some reason drives me crazy. I always
Yes.
procrastinate on it. So I do a couple of things as far as life hacks with the dishwasher that it can apply to anything. The first thing I do is I put on music that I like or a show that I like. I'm very into The Pioneer Woman right now, and I
Ah,
can kind of half watch.
yeah.
I don't have to be focused on it. So I turn on either music I love or an episode of The Pioneer Woman. And then the second thing I do is I really break down that task into teeny tiny chunks. So I might say to myself, okay, we're just going to do the coffee mugs. Now we're just going to do the plates or the silverware or whatever it is. And before I know it, it's done. But I think it's that
Yeah.
making it into smaller, more manageable parts that feels like, okay, I
Mhm.
can just do the mugs. That makes it feel easy and not as daunting. And I've added a little bit of fun, I'll call it, with the music or the show, and that helps as well.
Uh,
Okay, I love that
I
hack
love
too.
that. I have found that if I put music on, kitchen tasks are one of my least favorite tasks as well. I don't mind cooking, but I don't really love the cleanup. And it's just, I get very overwhelmed. I look at the whole big picture. So I'm like, if I chop these things, then I have to clean that. And then I need this bowl. And I spin out of control. So if I put music on, it does help. There's something about having that going that helps my brain relax instead of thinking about every task in front of me.
Or do like I do, and we just pay my son $5 a week to unload the dishwasher.
That's a fabulous idea.
I
Yeah.
know, except
Yeah,
for
we
it
do get the
sucks.
kids to do it. We don't pay at our house though. Don't tell my kids.
Oh, no, he forgets to do it in the morning, so then we sit there all day with this dirty pile of
Mm.
dishes in the sink waiting for him to get home. Like, "No, please unload, please unload."
So funny.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm still I don't want to say stuck on the ADD, ADHD, but
It's okay.
we hear about it a lot. I have so many friends who seem to be getting diagnosed late in
Yeah.
life, and even some people in my mom's circle who are, in their 70s and 80s who are being diagnosed now. And I think we're also used to the chaotic lives. We're very busy, and it's hard to distinguish between what is actually something that's diagnosable and what's just something that's a factor of us all living busy lives. So, how do we distinguish if there's something that we need to explore more or if
Mhm.
this is just normal living?
Yeah. And I feel like, at least for me, normal living right now feels like I have so many tabs open in my brain. And I'm sure that everybody listening can relate to that, and I'm jumping from one tab to the next, like one activity or one role I play to the next. And that can feel very overwhelming. And it is hard to decide,
Yes.
is this just chaos of normal life right now? Is this something that I actually, need to have assessed to see if it's something that needs to be treated either medically or otherwise? And I guess my official answer to that is that, of course, only, a medical professional can diagnose ADHD. But if you're feeling like those thoughts or those symptoms of ADHD, the inattention, the hyperactivity, the inability to stay focused for prolonged periods of time, if it's interfering with your life in two or more settings, that's the criteria from the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, the DSM,
Okay.
that you use to diagnose. It has to be two or more areas of your life, and it has to happen often, and it has to have a negative impact on your functioning. So if you're listening to this and you feel like, check, 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 that sounds like me, I would absolutely encourage you to follow up with either like your family, physician, or if you're somebody that sees a counselor or therapist, to check in with them because they have some other tools, more specific tools for assessment to tell you, is this normal chaotic life or does this sound like a medical diagnosis?
So you can start with a family doctor. I always wondered, where do
Absolutely.
you go to get
Hmm.
this diagnosed?
Yeah, you can start with a family doctor. Sometimes they will refer you to a specialist or a psychologist. And for the teenagers that I work with, sometimes you can go through the school system. The school
Right.
psychologist, like myself, cannot diagnose, but we have checklists and different assessment tools that we can use to say, is this normal high school age functioning, or is this what we call clinically significant from their peers? So what I tell parents sometimes is, I can't diagnose, but it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, probably a duck. And you can
Hmm.
take that information that the school gathers to your family pediatrician or, whatever medical professional you see, and then they
Okay.
can use that information to make the judgment call.
All right. That's
And
good
do
to
you
know because
have
I
kind of
wondered.
that initial checklist of what the symptoms or signs are that you think are? I always hear that like WebMD is a good source for things, and it can get kind of scary if you just go on
Yeah.
the internet. So if you have a trusted
Yeah.
list out there,
According to
Yeah.
WebMD, you're dying.
I
Like, that's it. That's
know.
their
Don't Google it.
answer always.
Don't Google it.
That's really funny. I think WebMD is probably a good place to turn, but you can also Google the signs and symptoms according to that DSM that I've
Okay.
mentioned.
Yeah.
The checklists that I use are more specific statements that the parents and teachers respond with how often they see something. So the
Mm,
statement might be something like, the student fidgets in their seat and can't sit still. How often do you see that? Never, sometimes, often, or almost always. It could be something like, how often do they lose their homework? How often do they look like they're paying attention, but when you call on them, they have no idea what's going on? So they're little
mhm.
moment in time, like scenarios. And then the questions are asking how often a parent or a teacher or even the teenager themselves, there's a teen version, see those things in themselves. And then it compares those to other teenagers who are the same age across the country so that it's not biased in any way, that it's comparing to what would be considered typical for that age.
That
I'm
is
curious what COVID
fascinating.
has done to that
I know. I was just
Oh,
thinking
typical teen brain.
COVID and
I am
social
super
media.
curious
Like,
too.
Yeah.
I want to, if we can for a minute, touch on executive dysfunction. You
Mhm.
mentioned it, you said it, and I hear that a lot. And again, I'm going to be really selfish. I think I have that, but I don't know. I'm self-diagnosed, but I wonder if you can talk about what that is. And I imagine a lot of moms are in that same category of not being able to figure out where to start.
Yeah. So to me, executive function is this big umbrella of behaviors and being able to manage these different things. One of them is time management, being able to manage your time. One is organization, both of your physical belongings and also organize your thoughts. Another one is kind of emotional regulation. Like,
Mm,
can we keep our emotions in check and kind of respond appropriately? If you are struggling or you see your teenager struggling with those types of skills, they may have some type of executive functioning deficit or they may have some type of impairment. Sometimes it's just a skill set that has not been learned. So we can
mhm,
teach those skills. We don't often teach how to manage your time. We don't often teach how to break a history project into smaller, more manageable parts. We don't often teach how do we look at our week ahead and kind of backwards plan and do what we need to do today to get us to step B tomorrow to get us to step Z on
mhm,
Friday. So
Mm,
sometimes it's just a skill deficit, meaning we can teach the skills and the problem kind of goes away or fades over
right.
time. Other times it's more of an impairment where we've started to teach the skills, the student's not responding, or we've taught the skills and we see a little progress, but we definitely need more one-on-one support versus just, teaching that skill to a group, for
right,
example. Yeah.
right. Yeah, listening to you talk about it, I don't actually think I have it.
Okay, good. Yay, check that one off.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yay.
I think maybe there's just too much in my head and on my plate sometimes, but I
Yes.
think I'm capable
Yep,
of figuring it out. Yeah,
No, and I
yep.
like
yeah.
that idea of breaking down something I mean, it's science fair time, not for either of my kids, thank God, but I'm listening to a lot of my friends whose kids are, it's the night before the science fair project and
Mhm.
they're running to Michael's because
Uh-huh,
they got to go get styrofoam and they got to do like
uh-huh.
all these things. So yeah, it is, I don't know, it's tempting to put things off till the last minute and
It
It
the
really
is.
kiddos
is.
learn the hard way a lot of the time and we learn the
They
hard way because we're
do.
going through it with them.
They do. And I always tell my teenagers, like, you have to be kind to your future self. Like, please do something
Mm.
today that is going to make your future self thank you, rather than not doing something today and your future self is going to be so mad at you. Like, we have to
Oh,
take really good care of our future selves.
I just wrote that down.
I
I
know
love
that
that.
may be our pillow. We always
Mm.
say that there's at least one thing every episode that we want a needle point on a pillow or
I
put
love
it on a
Yes.
that.
t-shirt, and that's it. Like, take care of your future self. What a
Yes.
kind thought.
I know. I know. We
Like,
always
give me
talk
the
about
pillow. I
tomorrow
want one.
Suzanne is like tomorrow Suzanne's really ambitious and really is going to get a lot of stuff done. But
I leave a lot of stuff for tomorrow, Missy. She's way more organized than today, Missy.
It's so
oh,
true. I think we're all guilty of that. And I have no problem saying that I see a therapist as well. And she taught me the concept of coping ahead. So to kind of
Ooh,
pre plan some things that you know are restful to you or relaxing. And I have used that phrase in my head a lot like, what am I going to do to cope ahead? And that's taking care of your future self as well. So just a real small example of that. Like I pre scheduled facials for myself every other month. It's a splurge. I don't even really know that I necessarily need to go that often, but I love it. And I know when I go, it's going to be relaxing. So I coped ahead for
mhm.
the whole 2023. I've got all my facials scheduled and I'm
that's
super excited
amazing.
about it.
That is such a great. Okay.
Yeah.
Coping ahead. I love that. Okay. And
Yes.
so we also want to talk a little bit for the kid who does have the science project that
Mm.
you know that goes kablooey because they didn't plan for it, or my daughter's going through college application time,
Oh,
so
yeah.
we're getting some highs and I'm sure there might be some lows coming. and
Right.
Yeah.
and I had talked about on the podcast about I put myself out there for a job a few months ago that I was excited about and didn't end up getting it. And so
Mm.
whether it's us or our kids, there are disappointments throughout life, whether it's because of our poor planning or just because
Yeah.
how that goes. But you talk a lot about teaching teens resilience, and I think we
Mhm.
also, in taking care of our future selves, need to get better at being resilient as well. So, can you talk a little bit about how to help cultivate that in ourselves and
Yeah.
also modeling that for our kids?
Yes. So things going wrong is a part of life. We know that it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it is going to happen. It's just when.
Mhm.
And what I find with a lot of my teenagers is that things feel like the end of the world when they don't go as planned. So, for example, I just had a kiddo fairly recently that did not make the varsity basketball team. And
Mm.
to him, it was pretty devastating. I mean, he really
Yeah.
thought that he was going to get it. He had played JV the year before, like he was on track to do this, and it felt like the end of the world to him. And the other thing about our teenagers is when something goes wrong, they tend to put a lot of meaning behind it that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So, for example, he started saying things like, I probably didn't even deserve to be on the team last year. Like they just pity took me
Mm.
last year. So he was creating this fantasy about how he wasn't a good basketball player. And it all just happened because he didn't make the varsity team. So I think I say that because I just want to acknowledge how hurtful and meaningful and full of emotion a setback is for our teenagers and for adults.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
what I try to teach my teenagers is that we need to have some type of recovery plan. So let's address what happened. So I kind of walk them through these different steps. Sometimes they're more open to talking to me about this than their mom or dad. And that's no offense. It's just because I'm not mom or dad. And
Yeah.
it's
Right.
easier sometimes to talk through it with somebody who doesn't have 16 years of emotions built up with you, right?
For
So
sure.
the first thing that we kind of go through is like, okay, what was the obstacle or what happened? And what was the outcome you wish you had? So, for my example of the kiddo that didn't make the basketball team, obviously didn't make the team. He wished he would have made varsity. And then we started talking about okay, which things in this scenario did you have control over? And which things did you not have control over? So, he mentioned things like he had control over how much hard work he put in during the clinics leading up to the tryouts. He had control over whether or not he showed up. He had control about how hard he worked the actual day of tryouts, etc. But what was harder for him was what were some of the things he did not have control over? And that's an important piece that I think sometimes is missing from the conversation about resiliency or what could we have done different or how could we have made this better is there are factors that are outside of our control. So,
Mhm.
for example, there was only 2 spots on the varsity team this year, when the year before they were taking 6. There were also many seniors trying out, and who knows what the coach's policy is about taking seniors, versus underclassmen. He doesn't have control over how well somebody else did during tryouts, et cetera, et cetera. So when we went through that list of the things he didn't have control over, he kind of started to come around a little bit and realize this wasn't his fault. Like it wasn't something that he did wrong. Were there some things he could have done better? Yeah, he said he probably could have practiced his free throws a lot more outside of practice because he didn't do so well in that area of the tryout. And then we talked about, okay, what would you do differently next time? And so he talked about that, well, maybe next time I'll practice the free throws. Maybe I won't put so much pressure on myself. And then lastly, what are we going to do now? What's 2 or 3 things that we can take action and do or think that are going to help us move on? So, my kiddo, we talked about rec basketball. He's going to do rec basketball this season because he wants to keep up his skills. He still loves the game he wants to play. It wasn't the
Right.
outcome he had originally wanted for himself, but there's also some pros to being on rec basketball, and he gets to meet some new people. And he's actually a
Yeah.
kid that feels pretty anxious during big crowds and having his whole school watch him. So rec basketball takes that out of the equation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So silver linings, what do we have control over? What would we do differently? Just kind of talking it out and putting less weight on it is really helpful.
I just
Yeah.
love that as a writer, and I know Suzanne can probably relate. Rejection is frequent with writing,
Mm,
and every time that happens to me, I go through down that path of like I when you said he told you, "Well, I probably didn't deserve to be on the team last year."
yeah,
I always think I probably didn't deserve any of the times that I've done well. When the piece got picked up, I probably didn't really earn that, or that person probably published my essay just as a favor. It really
yep,
wasn't worth it, kind of thing. And it's so, I mean, yes, adults are dealing with this in their jobs and
absolutely.
their relationships all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to overcome that, but when you practice it and you kind of have a model to follow to go through in your head and change that negative tape or that negative voice you
Hmm.
hear, that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
I love the
And
idea that resilience can be taught.
Mhm.
yes, and it's something that takes a lifetime of learning and practicing and
Hmm.
doing. And
Hmm.
since, I mean, as much as we like to focus on the moms here and not the kids, I am in a season of seeing everything through the lens of college applications.
Yeah.
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 And so I just think that the idea of things that are outside of your control
Right.
is so important, and not trying to be toxic positivity about like, oh,
Oh,
you totally should have got into that number one
Yeah.
school, like they must have
right.
done something wrong, they're not that, but the idea of like most of these schools that people are considering even safety schools now, because everybody's getting 25 to 35% more applications than
Yeah.
usual, they're
Mhm.
not anymore. And that's just a weird quirky thing of, I don't even know what, there's so many different variables to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just think there's hopefully a lot of parents are listening to this, can apply it to their own lives, but also use it to help their kiddos through. It might be surprises, kind of like the kid that didn't get on the varsity team. It was a surprise. Any other year, there would have been 6 spots. There's only 2 this year.
Yeah.
And that's very much the case, it sounds like, for a lot of colleges this year, too. So, or
It's
not that
true.
they don't
And
have as much space, but they have just that many more kids who are there to fill the
Right.
spaces. Yeah.
right.
Right.
It's competitive. And I've had to have conversations with my teenagers too about blooming where they're planted. And
Hmm.
it wasn't necessarily where they had originally thought they were going to be, but how do we make the most of where we are now? And how do we still get out of it the experience that we were hoping to get in college? And I think something that was really helpful with that is the use of storytelling. So, storytelling about people that either they know or they don't know, but who kind of took a different path than they originally had planned, or who have struggled with something or had rejection or didn't get into the college that they wanted and their life took a different path, but it all ended up in a great place in the
Hmm.
end. And I like that use of storytelling because it kind of takes the pressure off of their specific scenario and lets them kind of live vicariously through somebody else for a few minutes.
Hmm.
So I really like using storytelling when we don't get something that we originally thought we were going to get.
That's a great tool. I love that.
especially as storytellers.
Yes, especially as people who enjoy
Oh,
a
that's right.
story.
Right.
We want to pivot for a minute and just talk. You're an entrepreneur. As you mentioned at the
Mhm.
top of the show, you talked about starting this business, but you also have another job and you are a parent. And we think a lot of our listeners can relate to that because they're running their own businesses. They may have several other part time gigs, they've got kids, they've
Yeah.
got partners. What is your biggest challenge in balancing all this? And have you learned anything that you can pass on to our listeners?
Yes. So for me, the biggest challenge is that in my first couple of years of business, I sacrificed some time with my family and I sacrificed my husband's his time. Like, I had to rely on him a lot, and it was when my kids were
Right.
young. So I had to be like, "Babe, I need you to take both kids. I've got this coaching call." I had a moment, and I'm not afraid to admit it now. I was coaching a kid, and I had to feed the baby, and I had to turn my camera off and feed the baby so that the person I was coaching did not know, and that was too much, and I decided, like, I have to keep this so separate, and so what I do every single year when I make a plan for the business for the year, which of course changes midway through, but I list out what are my deal breakers. Like,
Mm.
I cannot inconvenience my husband. I cannot miss quality time with my kids. I will not take on a family that my gut is telling me I'm not the answer for them and they need some different type of help. Whatever the deal breakers are, I list them out at the beginning of the year and I stick to those like really hard because again, I'm taking care of my future self. Because if I do schedule something that is going to interfere with my kid's soccer game and I miss it, I'm going to be so mad at myself. And I never want to do
Right.
that. And I don't want to be resentful to whatever that activity is that has
Mhm.
interfered. So I stick really hard to what my deal breakers are. And that has helped immensely. It took me a couple years to learn how to do that, but that's been my biggest game changer.
That's great advice for everything. Like, what are your deal breakers for this project?
Yep.
And
Yes.
And
don't go
stick to
back on
them
them.
because you always think it's gonna be fine and then you're mad.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
And nuts and
Yeah.
bolts wise, for people who are maybe thinking of starting their own business, like what was this a matter of months? Was this years? Like the startup and
Mhm.
getting things rolling, getting clients? How did that look for you?
It's so this is year 7 for me. The first 2 years were like getting my certification and the practice hours you need to be certified as an academic life coach. And then really learning how to run a business because that's not my background. I'm not a
Mm,
business person. I work in
Right.
education and psychology. So I had to find a coach to help me through that process of building a business. And that was a big game changer for me because I always pride myself on being a good student. Like, give me the homework and I will do it. But if I don't know what the homework is, I really don't know next steps. And that was
Right.
hard starting a business to figure out, okay, what do you do first and second? And is this important or should I do that instead? So I listened to a lot of podcasts, but then I finally hired a business coach. And it took until about year 5 to feel like things were running without me constantly having to have my hands on all of them.
mhm.
And I learned to delegate. I learned to hire good people. If anybody is starting a business and listening, find yourself a good virtual assistant, even if it's 10 hours a week. And if you think you can't afford it, make it work because they take so much off of your plate and are huge time savers. And things that would take me 2 hours to do, sometimes it would take them, 30 minutes because they're skilled at that. And I'm not.
Mhm.
So get yourself some help as soon as you can too.
Oh, you're singing our song talking about hiring a coach. I love
Uh,
that you
Yes.
did that.
I needed to. It's honestly, it's where a lot of my expenses for my business are. My business coach is expensive and she's worth every penny though, because I really feel like she's invested in what I'm doing and everything that she tells me to do. When I do it, it works. So boy, I'm hanging on.
Yeah.
Oh, there is a coach for everything out there,
There
I think.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
She's a coach for online coaches. Everybody needs a coach.
oh my gosh. So now
Mm.
if people are interested in learning more about your services, where should they look?
Sure. You can look us up on our website. So it's www.lifesuccessforteens.com. It's a mouthful. It's a long website. We're also on Instagram at Life Success for Teens. And then we have a parent group on Facebook, and that is called Parents Raising Successful Teens. So we
Ooh.
do work with students virtually, unless you happen to be in the Cleveland, Ohio area. We do have a couple of people we meet in person, but we always kind of joke that we were virtual before Zoom was cool. Like we have kids from all over the country in different time zones. So my coaches are mostly in the Cleveland, Ohio area, but I have a couple on the West Coast now because I needed somebody in that time zone.
Right.
But because of the beauty of the internet, we can meet with anybody anywhere really at any time. I have a girl that FaceTimes me from her car at the end of volleyball practice. She just sits in there and we have our conversation and it works. Love
What
the
a
internet.
think of all the
Yes.
people in their 50s who or 60s or 70s or 80s who
Hmm.
could have benefited from starting off just knowing that whether it be therapy or just talking to someone or getting some coaching practices in place, more of the life management
Hmm.
aspects of it. How powerful that is to get a running start
Yes.
that young.
Yes.
See, future me, who's now me, wishes I could go back
Yeah,
and be kinder to future Suzanne and do that.
Right.
it's funny.
Oh
Oh,
my
it's
god.
amazing. And I've learned a million things. I know you have more you could teach us. I hope everybody goes and checks out your website, and we may have to have you back, but we're closing in on that end time. So we're going to jump into our Look, Listen, Learns. And for those of you who are new here, Look, Listen, Learn is a few minutes at the end of every podcast. We talk about what we're watching, reading, listening to, a product we love. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's serious. And we don't like to have our guests in the hot seat. So Suzanne is going first this week. What are you up to?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so looking at I wonder, did I already talk about this? I hope not, but I like it so much. Shrinking?
Oh, I talked about it last week.
Did you talk about it last
Yeah.
week? Oh, it's just
Or the
like you
week
stealing
before
my word of the year.
or something.
Oh my
But this time you stole my shrinking. No, but
God.
it's so good. Talk about it again.
Oh, well, then we probably, sorry for all the listeners who already listened about it. I just love it so much. It's
I
kind of
love it
like
so
the
much.
general mood and like vibe of it is very Ted Lasso,
Yes.
but it's with therapists instead of soccer. And the main star, Jason Segal, is it Segal or am I thinking Steven
Siegel.
Seagal?
Yeah, you're thinking of
Seagal,
Siegel.
okay.
Siegel.
Jason Seagal, Jessica Williams, and Harrison Ford are these three therapists that work together. It's just all the ins and outs of how their lives tie together, but just
It's so
it's very
good.
vulnerable and
Mm.
sweet.
Yes.
And I just love it so much. And I think it's one
Don't
you
you
could
think
watch.
Harrison Ford is shockingly funny?
He's so dry. He's
So dry.
so dry, so
Yes.
funny.
I sort of resisted the show for a little while because I was like, I don't know if I really want to watch Harrison Ford, whatever. Like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Like I just wasn't there. And he's one of my favorite parts of the show. His storyline is really dear and he's so dry and funny.
Yeah. And it's so cute. And you said that you watched it with your son, right?
Yeah. And he loves it and it opens us up to a lot of good conversation and and it's just fun. Like I mean there's sometimes Mark is like, "Oh my gosh." But I think it's great. It's not too awkward and it's stuff he's going to be out in the world soon.
Yes.
And so I love it. I love it.
So that I have been looking at. We've been looking at a lot of things on TV. We're getting ready for March Movie Madness. Oh God. The next episode we record, I'm gonna do my look of Triangle of Sadness. Oh my God. Getting ready for the Oscars. Ooh, wait for that one. Okay. It's a teaser. Listening. I know we're not supposed to say bad things about books, but these are some do not recommends. I'm not gonna like totally tear into them, but since I had talked about it before and said I was gonna report back, The Lost
Yeah.
Children Archive, which was just a slow mover. It's very, what is it when it's a fancy book? Literary?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Very literary.
Mm.
We just had the book club about it. I mean, this book club is the literary book club
Yeah, it is.
where it's like agents, editors, writer, like legit publishing world people. And they
Mhm.
had really interesting insights on it. But I thought it was literary just because I'm basic. But all of them had the same comment that it's just very literary. So if you are into that, there's some very beautiful passages, but it's just thinking your thoughts really deeply a
Uh-huh.
lot.
And probably
And
hard to listen to. Like, that
well, and
seems like
that's
it would
the
not
other
be a
thing.
good listen.
I was listening to it when I was training for my half marathon.
Mm-mm-mm.
And one of them was like, "Well, no, I actually really like the language of it." And I would listen to it when I was trying to go to bed at night. I was like, "Well, that's very different than when you're trying to, run mile 10
Right.
while you're listening to this book." So,
Right.
and then I also, for my other book club, listened to the book Reputation. It was just, if you find like thrillers and twist and turny books, just too twist and turny, and you just want a straight line book that, is written nicely, then this is the book for you. I kept waiting for the twist. I was like, nope.
Nope, no twist.
I mean, there's just like the littlest. So yeah, if you're like me and sometimes shows like West Wing or whatever, I'm like, this is too smart for me. I don't get it. So if you find Gillian Flynn to be too complicated, Reputation's the book for you. and and I have stopped listening to all my college planning podcasts, even some of my
Oh,
favorites who have they've become part of my life. I've deleted them all from my phone because
It's time.
partially because I was
then
shamed by my husband, but since someone's really going to have to come physically remove me from the parent Facebook groups about getting ready for college, because that has been my circle of
yeah.
procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
That's been
Mm-hmm.
dangerous.
Now you can take a few year break before you go through it all again.
Well, I keep on hanging in there because I'm like, well, what if they say something really important about,
Mhm.
They're not. You're
whatever.
good.
I almost called them chosen students. What are they? Accepted student, like
Chosen.
The
the
chosen
chosen ones. The chosen ones weekend. That's what it feels like. Anyway, there's all kinds of other crap coming up, and they might have some good stuff about asking for additional merit aid or that kind of stuff. So, of course, that's only like 0.01% of it. The rest of it is people like, my kid has a 4.4 weighted GPA and cured all these diseases. Do you think they'll be able to get into college? Oh, people are so bad. Let's see here. In my learn, as I mentioned, I have canceled all of our spring break activities. I decided, and I was just getting this vibe from the kids, and I was kind of feeling it too. Is just we love taking vacations together, and I think we're going to do a bunch during the summer, but we're just in this I think the kids just want to hang with their friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like my son's best friend's going to be gone the whole week except for the days we were going to be gone. And I was like, that's going to suck. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just had this vision. There's nothing in the works on Zoe's calendar right now, but I was picturing someone calling like on that Saturday and being like, "Hey, we're doing this pool party," or "Hey, we're doing this whatever." And I know she would be a good sport and hang out with us, and she's not one to mope
Right.
around, but I can just feel what that would have done to me if that was me as I
Right.
was 17 years old. So I think we're just going to save the money and do some little exploration things while we're here. So Zoe was interested in trying out some rock climbing because all these colleges she's looking at have rock walls, and so
They
it's like
do.
you better figure out how to do that.
The rec
Uh,
centers are just a really
there's
different thing than the rec centers of our day.
Yeah, we had nothing. We had
Oh.
nothing. And so, but I was looking at that, and I know that we talk about on the show how while we're curating these amazing lists of things for our kids to do over breaks, we should be doing stuff for ourselves. So I found a glass blowing class that I think I'm going to make Chris go. Actually, not even make. He had suggested it once upon a time to do a date night for some glass blowing. So that's going to be my little spring break camp for myself, I think.
We
But
did that last year and it was so fun.
is it just hot? It warned us that there's like no air conditioning in there,
It,
and be ready.
yeah. Are you going to go to Ghost Pepper? Is
Oh,
that
I
where you're
don't know where
going?
I'm going. I'll look.
Okay. Yeah. It is hot. It is very warm, but it's so much fun.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
That'd be a
Yeah.
good class for Zoe to take if she ends up there in Rochester.
Yeah.
Warm up a
Yeah.
little bit. No wonder they do it. All right. So that's my look, listen, learning.
Those are good ones.
What about you, Natalie? What do you look, listen, learning?
Well, first I have to say I'm jealous of your glass blowing because I've always wanted to do that. There's a
Yes.
place by me in Cleveland and I have to get there. So thank you
Yes.
for reminding me of that. It's on my bucket list.
Good.
The things that I'm into right now are very, I'm going to say like superficial and lighthearted because sometimes I deal with a lot of mental health stuff at my school psych job and it feels very heavy. And so
Mhm.
I need something that doesn't involve really heavy feelings. I need fluff. I need like
I get
beach
that.
read. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yep.
So I am reading Colleen Hoover books right now that
Yep.
everybody and their mom is reading and buying at Target. And I jumped on that bandwagon and I'm really enjoying them. I'm in the middle of It Starts With Us, which is, I think, the
Uh-huh.
second one. And I love that. And then I'm also really into this show on Netflix called Dream Home Makeover. And it's Sid and Shay McGee. Have either of you seen this?
I
No,
have
I love a good
not.
makeover show
I
though.
love
Me
makeover
too.
shows. Yes. And it's her. She's the brains of the operation. No offense to her husband, but she makes beautiful spaces and everything she does. I'm like, oh, that is so beautiful. And now she has a line at Target.
Oh,
Uh,
is it Studio McGee?
it's Studio McGee.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So
That is
you
it.
have heard of it.
You have heard of it. And not to go too far into a black hole, but there's also a Facebook group where you can see other people like designing their homes in this style and they link to all their products. So I can go down a
Oh.
pretty deep Studio McGee black hole in my spare time.
That's awesome.
That's my
Okay.
new thing I'm into.
Writing it down.
I also have a new favorite app. It's called Zen Color. And it's free. I'm sure there's a paid version, but I have the free version and it's color by number on your phone, which I spend too much time on my phone anyway. But if I
Uh,
need to like pass 5 minutes if I'm waiting at the doctor's office or something and I can't get
Yeah.
into a heavy task, the Zen Color app lets you pick these beautiful pictures and then you tap on the different colors and click where they go based off of the number. And when you're done, it's
Oh,
this just beautiful little thing. And it's silly and mindless, but I like it. The
I
Zen
love
Color.
stuff like that.
Mhm.
oh, that's so cool. Okay, love that. Cause yeah, that's when I get stuck talking about going down a black hole.
Yeah,
Because you just go one little thing on Facebook and then 10 minutes
Yes.
later or an hour later.
Uh-huh.
that's a fun one.
Hmm. Yeah, it's dangerous. Okay, I'm gonna check out that out because I love stuff like that.
All right. So,
Alrighty.
what about you, Missy? Got any look, listen, learns?
I do have a couple. So we've been watching Poker Face. Have either of you watched Poker Face yet?
Mhm.
Oh, you
It's
know what?
on.
She's on the smart list today. If you
Ooh,
need,
I'll have
if
to
you
go
need a little
listen.
more
Okay, yeah, it's
Natasha.
Natasha Lyonne.
Hmm.
And I love her. Every time I've ever seen her interviewed, she kills me dead. Like she talk about dry. She's dry and quirky and she's very funny. But the show is on Peacock, I believe. I'll check that and put it in the show notes, but I think it's
Yeah,
Peacock.
actually, I wouldn't usually know that except for they made a lot of cock jokes on Smart List
Oh,
today
Of
about
course
it.
they did. Of course they did.
So, yes, that's
Uh,
right.
yeah, so it's like kind of an old school vibe of a crime procedural, and she can tell when people are lying and she just figures stuff out. She has that almost like monk like ability to figure out what's going on, and it's got that old school vibe of like a different guest star every week. And I love it. It's got very cool guest stars and just a fun feel to the show, and it's an easy watch and it's pretty family friendly, I would say. Like it feels like watching TV in the 80s. So I highly recommend that if you're looking for a fun. I don't think you can binge it all. Like we've been watching just an episode at a time, and I don't know if they're all out yet, but we are not finished with it. So maybe not bingeable. Maybe you have to wait for the end. But anyway, recommend it. And then I have been listening to, I've talked about this podcast before, A Slight Change of Plans with Maya Shankar.
Hmm.
And the most recent episode is called You Have More Influence Than You Think, and it's fascinating. So
ooh,
it's episode, I don't know what episode it is. I'll put it in the show notes. I don't know what number it is, but I'll link to it. And it's really interesting about how people perceive you in ways that you don't realize and how you can exert influence in a really kind way and be yourself and not have to like turn on some sort of like how to what's the book they talk about it, how to win friends and influence
oh
people.
yeah,
Hmm.
So, and
Hmm.
Dale
like
Carnegie.
you don't have to be schmarmy like that. You can like actually just be you and exert some influence over people. So I love it, and we'll link to it. And then it's so funny, I have an app today as well. It's called Impulse Brain Training, and it is paid, unfortunately. But every day you get like 3 games, and they're just little brain training games, and it takes
Fun.
5 minutes. And I love that kind of crap. It's just fun, just like
Same.
matching or drawing a pattern or something. And so, and then they have within the app some other games. And there's one, I'm so ashamed of this, but also kind of proud. There's this one where you would have to connect the lines, the colored lines between the dots without crossing over each other, and you
Oh,
have to fill
yes.
in the entire grid. Addictive. And so I showed my husband and he got it. And we were at a swim meet, not last weekend, but the weekend before. And we just connected damn dots for
Oh,
days. like
Wait,
addicted.
was this a Facebook impulse purchase? I see a bunch of Facebook ads that show like can you connect the dots or not cross the dot?
No.
Okay. I thought maybe they got
I
you
don't
on
know
that.
where I think I heard an ad for it, like on a podcast or something, but of course ran right to it because it sounded right up my alley. And then, and you can also, when you download
Oh,
it, you can play a game and they give you a discount. So who
fun.
knows how accurate this is, but they told me that I am paying 97% less than full price. So I really am not paying that much for it.
of course.
But because I did
Relatively.
so well on the brain game, I got a discount.
That's
You did
funny.
so well.
And of course, I bought in. I tell
Like a
Mark, and I'm like,
scholarship. Did you
yes,
get
I'm
the
like, see if you
presidential
can get
scholarship?
97% off of yours when you download it.
Oh
But
my
it is
goodness.
super fun, and I love connecting those dots. Love it. I have
Oh.
connected all the dots.
I think you're
Um,
connecting brain. What is it?
It's
Brain
Neural
yeah,
pathways.
neural
yeah.
pathways. Thank you.
It's
That's how
gotta be
strong my
good
brain
for
is.
me.
Of
And I
course.
figure it has to be better for me than a social media
Oh,
scroll
yeah.
hole.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out because
Mhm.
what's the one I do? Wordle.
Oh, that's
That
yeah.
only
fun
takes
too.
so much time. So
Right? I'm
I
kind of
need.
wordled out. It's just,
Oh,
I'm done. And because I used to play the spelling bee every day too.
yeah.
And I still play it sometimes. I do love the spelling bee, but I needed some other kind of brain game. Like I was
Okay.
just doing that. And so, yeah, it's just a little different than a word game.
Well, I need that for my brain, and then I need, yes, I love all these new practices and hacks that we've learned today about
Yes.
how to get my brain a little more organized for the things that I need to get done and trick it into doing the things that it does not want to
Yep, it's all
do.
about tricking yourself. Yep, just brain games.
Totally is. I love what you're doing for
Thank
teens, and I
you.
love that we can apply it to ourselves as
Yeah,
well.
Yes.
absolutely.
You're helping the next generation so much.
Yes.
I'm
Thank you.
excited for them. And we will definitely put it in the show notes so people can find you
Yeah.
and so they can take advantage of your services and learn from you as well. So, yeah,
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being here.
It was an absolute pleasure.
take care. You have a great week.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us for the Mom and podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and if you know someone else who could benefit from the episode, please be sure and share it with them. And while we're begging, please subscribe and rate us wherever it is you listen to podcasts. You can find links to all the things we discussed today in our show notes or over at our website, momandpodcast.com, with the A-N-D spelled out. In between shows, find us over at the socials, including our private Mom and Community Facebook group. The links to that group and all of our socials can be found at momandpodcast.com. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you more than you know. Now go out there and make your ellipses count.